Everybody. We are just going live today for our lunchtime session with a wonderful Maureen Bowes, who's a top executive coach. You have coached people from head teachers to senior leaders, and your thing, and I love this, Maureen, is self-compassion, self-kindness. So welcome today. I'm really pleased to you today, really. So this is Susie Walker. I am the editor-in-chief of Psychologies Magazine. I just want to welcome everybody to the broadcast today. We're going to be talking about how to feel better about yourself. I don't know about you or any of our listeners that are listening today, but that kind of not feeling great, feeling lacking of confidence, constantly being comparing ourselves to other people, and you always come out the worst. It's horrible. It is absolutely horrible. So, Maureen, where do we start about feeling better about ourselves? Where do we even begin to even notice? I mean, I was saying to you earlier, it's been very, very recently that I started to be a lot more championing to myself than I have been. I've been my worst critic, I think. So where do we start with changing the soundtrack?
I think an obvious place to start and a really simple place to start is to really understand what you mean by compassion, not self-compassion, but compassion. And most of us would intuitively or instinctively feel compassion, kindness, wanting to make things better for someone else. We're good at this towards others. So if we had someone we really cared about who was struggling or self-doubting or upset, what would we do? The first thing we'd do is we'd make time for them. And from making time for them, we'd listen and we'd comfort or reassure in some way. So that if you understand what compassion is when you're giving it to other people, this is the tricky bit, turning it inwards, doing a version of it for yourself. So let's translate that into practice for ourselves. So making time for someone else we care about, how do we make time for us? That in itself can be a big challenge, the time and the space. Once we've made time and space for us, the listening bit, we would sit and listen to someone else while they offloaded. How do we do that for ourselves? So a big part, and I know lots of Psychologies readers will do this, is writing it. That we can make time for ourselves and offload onto the page. The page doesn't judge us. The page listens, in effect, or sketch or something creative through our hands that helps us feel lighter and gets things out of our head. And then this is the bit we were talking about earlier, Susie, is the messages, the thoughts in our head that we give to ourselves. We wouldn't say those to other people that we care about. So it takes a lot of practice. We were saying we've had decades of not good programming, if you like, or programming that pushes us harder, tells us to be better. We give ourselves a hard time. So turning that around so that we're giving ourselves the messages we would give to others we care about, reassuring ourselves, being a kind of rooting for ourselves is different vocabulary. And I think why we find it so difficult sometimes is because it's deeply personal, and it can sound a bit odd, it can sound a bit embarrassing if you try to say to yourself words of comfort. So what I think is really important is that you think about the words that you would say to someone you loved or someone you care about, because they're your words, and turn them inwards. So those things together, making time and space for ourselves, listening to ourselves, offloading, expressing ourselves, and then just reassuring in a way that boosts us. Because even though we think if we give ourselves, if we toughen up and push harder, that will bring more success, you can have more success if it's on that foundation of care and love and kindness. You can go from softening to toughening, but if the softening is first, I think that the tough stuff can sit on top of that. Kristen Neff, who's one of the key researchers in self-compassion, has done a lot of research in motivation based on self-compassion? Because lots of people think, well, I'd never do anything if I was just kind to myself. You know, I need to be hard on myself to do better. But she's researched this, and there's lots of good evidence now to substantiate that.
I mean, I think that piece around vocabulary. So two things I'm getting from you. The one is the vocabulary that we can use. One exercise that has worked for me is to think about my really good friends, because sometimes I haven't got the vocabulary to be, I mean, I know that sounds awful, but I haven't got the vocabulary to be kind to myself because the other soundtrack has been so vicious and horrible for so long. So then I think about, you know, some good friends, and I try and make a list of the things that they've said to me. I remember, actually, she's one of my team and a very good friend of mine. But she once said to me, the universe will always look after you, Susie. It will always look after you. And it was such a lovely thing to say. And I've kind of taken that with me. I thought, if that was true, what would that feel like? So that was a kind of a really lovely thing to kind of fall back on. And then, you know, my best friend is so wonderful and she says great things and come on, all the really positive. So sometimes it's trying to, you know, it's very difficult for us to put into words those things. But if we think about what our good friends would say to us, I think that's a really good thing to say. So finding the vocabulary, I think, is key to this, to changing the conversation. And the second thing you were saying was about, you know, often we are motivated, aren't we, by the whip. You know, they call about the carrot and the stick. You know, most of them, I would say 90% sounds like, but I don't know if that's true, but it's like 90% are motivated by the stick. And I suppose it's being brave enough to try your methods, Maureen, to try to use self-kindness and self-compassion and see what the results are. You know, you were talking about Christian Neff there and the research that's being done. I mean, what have you got to lose by trying?
Exactly. Yeah.
Try this. And now I know you've got a free program that people can do. So tell us a bit. So if we were going to say, right, I'm going to give this a go, I'm going to experiment with this, give us some of the tools in the free program. What is it that you would be encouraging us to do? So find the vocabulary one. What else?
I mean, self-compassion, along with things like emotional intelligence and resilience, is multifaceted. Yes. So it's not just a linear thing. And in some ways, that's really quite liberating, because if you do a little and often, if you do something every day that's under that broad term self-compassion, you know, you will progress with it. But the pragmatic side of us, we need to know, well, what are the steps? Where do I start? And self-compassion is a whole, I sometimes think of it like a Venn diagram with lots of circles that all overlap. And yes, the content of those circles would be mindful awareness. So even if you knew nothing about self-compassion, but were routinely practicing mindfulness, that will help with self-compassion. The messages, the kind, managing our thinking or choosing at least what to focus on in our thoughts. Our thoughts will take us all over the place, as we've already covered. If we can put things together that mean we can regulate, manage on the inside our choices, where we want to focus, so we can choose to focus on things that are kinder. We can choose to focus on things that are more optimistic. So mindfulness, kind messages, kind thoughts to ourselves. Another big area is connectedness. So knowing we're not alone in how we feel. You and I know we're not the only people who are hard on ourselves if there's a challenge in front of us. And knowing that we're connected and getting a much bigger perspective on our little dot that we are in the universe kind of thing can really help just gradually shift us. I believe a really big part of self-compassion that's often overlooked is creative self-expression. So just as we mentioned earlier, writing things down, sketching, making something, some kind of craft that focuses us, and we're doing things through our hands, gives us again a kind of mindfulness. In addition to that, pulling all those things together, obviously self-care, I'm almost, that goes without saying, but then bringing those all together in a way that we can regulate ourselves. So even if we just did one thing every day that ticked one of those circles, we'd be gradually progressing towards being kinder to ourselves. And I think the thing with self-compassion and other related areas is that it does take time. Obviously, it takes months, years, decades. We were saying it's taken us so long to get to the point that we're at in our lives now. But if we trust that doing something little and often, rather than wanting an instant result, which is great and energizing, but doing these practices daily, even just for a very short time, after a while, we get to a point of thinking, I wouldn't have felt that a month ago or 6 weeks ago or a year ago. I'm different now. And then you begin to realize that the difference has come from just that steady commitment to doing a small thing each day. And it is truly transformative. I think little and often are really underrated. I know in psychology that, so many of these broadcasts of emphasize the kind of incremental value of doing little things often, and I can't agree more. It's so transforming, but slowly transforming. But I believe lasting change happens gradually. So
I agree. You occasionally hear about people who are instantly enlightened, but for the rest of us, it just takes time. And I think self-compassion is a massive part of that self-development journey, because I was talking to someone just yesterday about this, where, I know what to do. I've read all the books. I do, but it's in the moment when I get triggered, is not just to try to stop having a temper tantrum or whatever it is. And then when I fail, when I tell off my son and do exactly the thing that I said I wasn't going to do, and then it's to kind of have that compassion to myself. And then, for me, I think self-compassion is one of the most transformative things that we can do, because it affects every single area of our lives. Yes. So for me, about the connections that we have, because if you could start having a little bit of forgiveness and understanding but how difficult it is really to change, to make really true lasting change, you can have a lot more compassion for other people, and then do it. You know what I mean? I have a sense of humor about, I know what to do. I don't always get it right. 80% I don't get it right. And I'm just so much kinder to myself now than I used to be. Yeah. And it means that I'm kinder to my team. I'm kinder to my son sometimes.
I think, obviously family is the biggest challenge for all of us. That's where we trip up the most. And I think, pulling together some of these practices that I know you do, Susie, but the thing that I would add in terms of remembering in the moment when you trigger, when you're really on the spot, the thing that I found works best for me and for many of the people that I work with is a combination of the things that we've said, but particularly the writing. So when the next time you're triggered and you say something you regret, afterwards, if you take that time for yourself and write and offload, then to think how you wish you'd done it, or how you would like to do it next time. And if you're writing that down, I find it embeds more. So your intention is more likely to happen the way you want it to next time. So those kind of processes, even repeating before it happens, what you intend to do, what you intend to say, how you intend to feel, can really be the thing that changes your behaviour in the future. So the reflection, the writing, the time for yourself translated into intention is incredibly powerful.
I absolutely agree. I've just been doing lots of research about visualization recently, and that very thing about when you imagine it, when you go through it, and then it just becomes the place where you go to. It's the neural pathways in our brain. neuroscience. I mean, 20 years ago, we didn't know this for sure. We knew it kind of instinctually that happened, but now they've studied the brain with MRI. They show that when you imagine it, the brain doesn't know the difference between unimagined. I mean, that is I mean, that's incredible. So all the things that the kind of, I mean, the Buddhists have known forever, and meditation, it is, we're literally training our brain for kindness and compassion. But we have to start somewhere. So this is the time. Go on.
Just on that point, the quote that I've put for this session is from Matthieu Ricard, who's an author and a Buddhist monk, and who is the happiest man in the world. And that's because the neuroscientists have scanned his brain for like 12 years. That his quote on how he defines happiness is having the inner resources to deal with the ups and downs of life, which is such a powerful and within reach approach to life. So that's what this online program's about. And, ultimately that's what self-compassion is, I believe.
Well, I love the idea of inner resources being like a toolkit, isn't it? It's something you can learn. It's not some magical thing that some people have bestowed on them. It is a thing that you learn, and
everyone can.
Learn this in a very structured way. And for us, we, so Maureen, just tell us a little bit about, this is your plug bit. You can plug your free program.
Okay. So it's a free online program called Making Things Better for Myself, 30 Days of Self-Compassion. So all people need to do is sign up for it. And then once they're signed up, it takes them into a website where they have their personal page. And from that point on, for 30 days, each day in their inbox, they get a reminder for that day's self-compassion practice. And it brings in all the components of self-compassion over 30 days. So to access it, they would go to peopleintelligence.com. And a pop-up will appear and they can just click and go straight through to it. If for any reason the pop-up doesn't appear, go to the free resources page on peopleintelligence.com. And once they're in it, they can download a log and keep track and just make a few comments on how they've got on with each exercise. So they get that for 30 days and there's no...
Wonderful. I mean, it's a perfect exercise to do in lockdown. I mean, I know... The lockdown will be over by the 2nd of December, but what a great thing to start. If the one thing we're going to focus on is self-compassion and just seeing how, for the last fume of the year, which has been a very challenging for many of us. So what a wonderful way to end it.
Or start the next one, because it doesn't, it's not time restricted. It's there forever. Even going into the new year, starting with 30 days of self-compassion would be great.
Imagine having a new soundtrack to your life of self-compassion and kindness to start 2021. It's like a reset, isn't it? The reset.
I
love it, Maureen. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to go off and download it now as well, because I think that would be, I love that idea, because I think it is the most transformative thing today. But, we get a little bit scattered. So having a 30-day program that I can follow, I love that idea. So thank you. I'll be doing it. I'll see you in there.
Fantastic. I'll see you there. Thanks so much. It's been great.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.